talk to you about an uncomfortable subject, fear. I think fear gets a bad rep, especially in business. And I'd like to change that, and I'd like you to help me. You know, as leaders, as achievers, as people who get stuff done and make wonderful things, we're trained to ignore fear. We're trained to pretend that it doesn't exist. Fear is for the weak. Fear is for the timid. Winners deny fear, defy fear. Winners don't feel fear. But is that true? And is that right? Is it actually helpful for us to ignore our fear and the fears of the people that we lead? I don't think so. I think we actually achieve our most amazing growth when we embrace our biggest fears. You know, fear is one of our most common human emotions. I could be feeling it right now. It's also one of our most powerful emotions. Fear can motivate us to act, or it can paralyze us. Fear can cause us to hunker down and dig in, or it can spur us to achieve. Fear can cause us to rethink outmoded assumptions, or it can make us second-guess everything that's made us successful. Fear is tricky. I've spent my career leading change and pioneering new territory, developing markets for multinational companies in Asia and around the world, leading startups and building new businesses at Harley-Davidson, and helping big brands like Amex, FedEx, the San Diego Zoo innovate and grow. So I've seen up close and personal how change gives rise to fear in people and in organizations. So I want to share with you today 5 common fears in business and how we can use the tools of innovation and design to overcome those fears and drive positive change for our organizations, for ourselves, and for people in the world. First fear is fear of losing control. What do you do when your very successful core business carries within it the seeds of its own demise? When a generation of customers has driven years of profitable growth, but they are now, every day, one day closer to not being able to use your product. When your success depends on a constellation of relationships with customers, suppliers, distributors, dealers, unions, regulators, community leaders, how do you make big change that satisfies all their needs? In other words, how do you build for a brighter tomorrow without killing your golden goose today? In 1998, Harley-Davidson was a $2 billion company. Sales had doubled and profits had tripled in the previous 5 years. And yet, only 15% of buyers were under 35 years old, and only 10% were women. So the vast majority of customers were middle-aged white men, and they were getting 1 year older every year. Now, dealers were selling every bike they could get their hands on, so they were not interested in cultivating new customers. Worse, our brand-building efforts had led to a resurgence of interest in motorcycling that was overwhelming the capacity of existing state-run motorcycle training programs, clogging the pipeline for new customers. The board identified this double threat and said, here's your challenge. Figure out how to remove the bottleneck while making money. You have 60 days to figure it out. Enter fear, stage left. We decided to launch Rider's Edge, a program to teach people how to ride at dealerships while connecting them to the Harley community. We used the nationally approved curriculum of the Motorcycle Safety Foundation to make licensing seamless. We worked with dealers across the country to get geographic coverage and to create a home base for new riders. And we designed the course to honor this important rite of passage for these Harley dreamers with features like souvenir photos of students on their favorite bike and a graduation celebration. Rider's Edge increased the capacity of rider training. It increased our sales to women and younger adults, and it built a pipeline at the dealerships. In fact, Rider's Edge recently trained their 300,000th new rider in the United States. We broadened our demographic without alienating our core by offering an authentic introduction to motorcycling, by attracting our most avid customers to become instructors, by demonstrating the benefits to dealers, by working closely with regulators, and by involving key stakeholders within the company and beyond. When you design a system solution that aligns everyone's interests and plays to their strengths, instead of losing control, you learn how to share it. Our next fear is fear of failure, and Maybe that one seems obvious. Isn't it always fear of failing that keeps us from taking risks? Well, I think it is, but it's also a fear of being wrong. And the problem with that is that none of us is smart enough to get big ideas right the first time. How many times did Thomas Edison fail? Fear of failure is what traps us in safe moves and small ambitions. We need to accept failure as part of the creative process and plan for it. Fail by design, do it fast, and do it smart. Here's an example. Holiday Inn is the world's largest hotel chain based on room count. They were looking for growth in a stagnant economy and saw an opportunity to transform vast, unproductive hotel lobbies into flexible spaces that would attract guests to gather and socialize and hang out and enjoy food and beverages 24/7. It was a big opportunity for increased food and beverage sales. It was also a big risk of failure. There was not a budget to invest in big, bold moves. Licensed hotel owner-operators would have to be convinced upfront that any change was going to benefit them. And to succeed, we'd have to combine all the functionality of a mini-mart, a coffee shop, a brew pub, a fast casual restaurant, a video arcade, and so on, into one space. So how could we get all that complexity right without investing in a giant build-out? Well, we took over a giant warehouse, and we built an entire life-size mock-up of the hotel lobby experience out of foam core. And then we tested and we simulated and we adapted and refined every scenario that we wanted to enable. A couple would want to grab a drink and have some appetizers. A family would need to entertain the children while mom and dad recharge. Road warriors would want to grab a beer and a bite and maybe check out the game while playing with their PowerPoints. Because the mock-up was out of the public eye and easy to rearrange, we could experiment freely. And because this setup was very easily accessible, we could bring hundreds of stakeholders through the experience, including hotel owner-operators and executives from Holiday Inn. So the resulting design is known as the Hub, and following a successful pilot, it has begun an aggressive international rollout this year. So far, food and beverage revenues are up between 25% and 35% per room. So if you want to build a culture that's not afraid to innovate, you need to replace the fear of failure with the fear of failing to learn. Our next fear is fear of the unknown, fear of the future and what the future may bring. And the key to overcoming this fear is to stop making predictions. Stop talking about what the future might be like and start inventing it now before somebody else does. Imagine for a moment that you are one of the world's largest banks. The global banking sector is in turmoil. Your headquarters is in Europe. You have a front row seat to the European debt crisis. People's perceptions of banking are changing, and not necessarily for the better. The way people bank and make financial transactions is also changing. And competitors from ING to Google are coming out with new innovations daily. BBVA is a global bank with 47 million customers. They knew that the world was changing and they needed to change with it, so they started with a question. What is the future of bank branches in retail banking? But it soon became clear that the future of the branch depends on the future of banking, which, given the events of recent years, was a little bit murky. So instead of trying to predict the future, we set out to invent it. We embarked on an ambitious program to design the ideal banking experience for customers in the year 2020. This would have to meet the future needs of BBVA's current customers. It would have to meet the needs of people who don't use banks today in developed and developing markets. And it would have to anticipate the future needs of future young adults who today are barely teens. To create hypotheses about all these future unmet needs, we studied everything. How people in developing markets manipulate the system of bank promotions to get more giveaways by opening and closing accounts. How women form informal savings circles. What branch employees really do with their downtime. And how kids playing with Webkinz toys develop notions about savings and consumption by interacting in a virtual online economy. The resulting Bank of the Future service model puts the customer at the core. It combines virtual experiences with hands-on interactions and integrates social networks. It allows people to interact with the bank on their own terms in ways that are convenient and cost-effective, whether that's banking online at home in your kitchen, from your smartphone in Madrid, from a bodega in Chile, or a retail branch in Birmingham, Alabama. Today, BBVA is defying fear of the unknown and charting their own course by rolling out the bank of the future as we speak. Our next fear is fear of the truth, and maybe you're thinking, well, hey, what's wrong with the truth? Well, nothing in theory, but we often have trouble accepting it. As when slumping sales are blamed on the weather or upcoming elections. The reality is we need to confront stark, difficult truths before we can see how to push beyond them. Let's talk about the Pampers brand and a difficult truth they needed to face. Pampers was tasked with finding new growth, so they set their sights on emerging markets. And China, with a vast population and very limited use of disposable diapers, seemed like a big opportunity. But it was uncharted territory. I'm sure some of you may have experienced what it's like trying to figure out how to operate effectively in a difficult and unknown environment. If any of you are parents, just think to those first few sleepless nights and that first diaper that you changed. Well, it turned out there were reasons why in China there wasn't much market for disposable diapers. Outside major cities, people tended to live in extended families. With abundant adult supervision, children were trained to answer nature's call on demand. Chinese families used a combination of cloth diapers and split pants to support that traditional method of toilet training. So the truth was, people in China didn't care about disposable diapers. They didn't see the need. And this was a stark reality. Pushing beyond it meant digging deeper, reframing the challenge, and finding the hidden opportunity. Spending months getting to know Chinese families, unpacking the cultural nuances, it became clear that while working mothers were on the rise, extended support systems were becoming less prevalent. Disposable diapers could offer a way for mom, dad, and baby all to get their needed sleep. By focusing on the benefit of a full night's sleep, Pampers could be positioned within the existing cultural context and complement, not compete with, traditional methods. And because Chinese consumers valued lightness and breathability over padding, a new design with far fewer material inputs could dramatically reduce the cost of bringing Pampers to market in China. By offering the promise of a full night's sleep, Pampers became an aid to child development and family wellness. And by radically reducing the cost to market, it made disposable diapers accessible to the masses. By confronting its difficult truth and pushing beyond it, Pampers became the #1 diaper brand in China and maintains that position to this day. Our last fear is fear of success. And maybe that seems counterintuitive. But a big barrier to innovation in many organizations is the fear of self-cannibalization. The worry that the new product or service will be so successful that it erodes the core business. The antidote to this fear is preparation. Identify a few leading indicators to track how the new offering impacts the core business. Then run some scenarios. What if it really does take off? Could we exit our core business in a way that maximizes our total value? What if the new thing flops? Could we shut it down quickly in a way that protects our reputation? The scenarios themselves can be scary, but by working through them hypothetically, you develop the fortitude to make the right call when the time comes. It's why firefighters run drills. An example here, Bertucci's, for 30 years, has sold their trademark brick oven pizza up and down the East Coast in family-friendly restaurants. But in recent years, core customers weren't coming in as often, and Gen Y families were not showing up. Now, management believed there was a good opportunity with the under 35 crowd, but that demographic just wasn't connecting with their existing format. Intensive study of how Gen Y and millennials eat out and interact with food led to the development of a new concept and a new brand, 2 Ovens. The menu will feature fresh, natural food that's easy to share and take out. An open kitchen will feature authentic preparation where people can see food being prepared in one of 2 ovens, each having special characteristics. Seating will be designed so that waitstaff and guests are placed eye to eye. And waitstaff will be encouraged to share their own personalities and their knowledge about food. Even waiting for a table will be different, with the wait list displayed in analog form where everyone can see it and easily do a status check. Prototyping the concept in multiple forms developed confidence in the management team while showing clearly how the new concept differentiated from the existing. This included a foam core mock-up of the entire restaurant, videos to build empathy for the target customers, storyboards outlining the ideal customer experience and customer journey, and financial models to simulate the economic outcomes. And what this allowed us to do by prototyping in these multiple languages at one time was to assess in real time how changes requested by the executive chef would impact the service experience. And then if we adjusted the interior to enable that change, how would that play out in the financials and in the marketing storyline? We even engaged the C-suite in role-playing potential dining scenarios where they impersonated 20-somethings and went out on the town and decided to grab a bite, checked the 2 ovens menu on their iPhone, and then dropped into the restaurant to share some food and drink. Once wary of developing a new brand, Bertucci's is now leaning into their fear. The first 2 ovens is scheduled to open in December. So the list of fears that organizations can face is endless. What's important is to face those fears head on, confront them directly. As leaders, we're told to make rational decisions and leave emotion out of the equation, but organizations are made up of people, and people are emotional beings. And fear is one of the strongest emotions that we have. So I say good leaders teach people to confront their fears, embrace them, and use them to drive positive change. As any motorcycle rider knows, you cannot turn a bike unless you lean. And the faster you're moving, the farther you have to lean. It can be uncomfortable. Well, it's the same with innovation. If you want to change direction, you've got to lean. So my advice is whether you're trying to change the world or innovate your business or just better connect with a new set of customers, whenever the inevitable fear arises, the best course of action is to lean into it. Thank you.